The gymnasium at Ashford Elementary was packed wall to wall, parents in folding chairs, students cross-legged on the floor, a banner reading Community Appreciation Day hanging crooked above the stage. Principal Devin Marsh stood at the podium, microphone in hand, flanked by two school board members. "And this," Marsh said, gesturing toward the side entrance where an older man in a worn navy jacket stood holding his bus keys, "is Harold Whitfield, our bus driver, who, as some of you may have heard, was recently written up for insubordination." A ripple of whispers moved through the parents. "We like to think of Ashford as a family," Marsh continued, smiling for the cameras from the local news station near the back wall. "But even families sometimes have to let go of members who don't fit the culture we're building here." Children in the front row turned to look at Harold. He didn't move. "Effective this Friday," Marsh said, "Mr. Whitfield's contract will not be renewed." Harold set his keys down gently on the folding table by the door. But none of them knew who he really was. Rewind 7 months. Harold Whitfield was 66 years old, and for 15 years he had driven Route 12 for Ashford Elementary, arriving at his first stop at 6:50 a.m. sharp, knowing every child's name, every parent's face, every quiet kid who needed an extra good morning to start the day right. He wore the same navy jacket every winter, kept a coffee thermos with a faded Cardinals logo in the cup holder, and always left 5 minutes early so no child ever had to run for the bus. Every Sunday, he visited a small cemetery on the edge of town, where his wife, Margaret, was buried beside their only son, Daniel, who had died at 19 in a car accident on the very highway Harold's bus route ran parallel to. He never spoke of it. He simply drove carefully, every day, past the spot, slowing down without ever quite admitting why. What almost no one at Ashford Elementary knew was that Harold Whitfield had once been a federal judge, appointed young, respected widely, known for rulings that quietly reshaped labor protections in his state. After Daniel's death, Harold resigned from the bench without explanation, unable to sit in judgment of anyone else's family when his own had shattered so completely. He sold his house, moved to a smaller town, and took the first job that let him be useful without being seen, driving children safely to school every single day, the way no one had been able to keep his own son safe. He never told anyone at Ashford who he used to be. Grief, for Harold, had become a kind of quiet penance, showing up, staying invisible, doing the work well. When Devin Marsh became principal, eager to modernize Ashford's image for an upcoming district ranking review, he saw Harold as an easy target for optics. He excluded Harold from staff recognition photos, despite Harold's flawless safety record. He publicly reprimanded Harold in front of parents at pickup for questioning administrative decisions, when Harold had simply raised a concern about an unsafe drop-off zone near the highway. He quietly reduced Harold's route hours, posting the change on a bulletin board instead of speaking with him directly. Harold said nothing each time. He simply nodded, checked his mirrors, and kept driving his route on time. Community Appreciation Day was Marsh's opportunity to show the school board he could make hard, forward-thinking personnel decisions ahead of the district ranking review. He wanted visible proof he was cleaning house. So he humiliated Harold on stage, in front of parents, in front of children, in front of a local news camera, calling him insubordinate and announcing his termination publicly instead of privately. "We have to hold everyone to the same standard," Marsh added, glancing at the board members for approval, "no matter how long they've been here." Harold looked toward the podium for a long moment. Then he said only one thing, calm and unhurried, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "I'll remember that." He picked his keys back up, walked to his bus, and drove his route home one last time that afternoon, slowing down as always, near the spot on the highway where he always slowed down. Emboldened by the board's applause, Marsh accelerated his plan, quietly moving to replace 3 more longtime staff members he considered not aligned with our new direction: a cafeteria worker, a crossing guard, and a longtime janitor who had worked at Ashford for over 20 years. Parents began complaining that the new hires didn't know their children's names, didn't notice when a kid seemed upset, didn't slow down near the dangerous curve on Route 12 the way Harold always had. A minor incident occurred, no one hurt, but a close call at the same unsafe drop-off zone Harold had flagged months earlier, the one Marsh had dismissed as not a priority. 6 weeks later, the district's legal counsel received an unusual letter, a formal safety complaint, filed properly and factually, citing federal transportation and child safety statutes, specifically referencing case precedents from decades earlier, precedents the letter's author clearly understood at an expert level. The letter wasn't from a parent group or a lawyer. It was written and filed personally by Harold Whitfield. Attached to it, almost as an afterthought, was a single line of professional history required for the filing's credibility statement. Former federal judge, United States District Court. The superintendent's office called an emergency meeting. No one at Ashford had known. What nobody at Ashford Elementary realized was that Harold Whitfield wasn't simply a mild-mannered bus driver with strong opinions about safety. He was a retired federal judge with deep, specific expertise in exactly the kind of negligence and safety statutes now at the center of the district's exposure, and his calm, procedurally perfect complaint had just put the district's entire legal position on the record, permanently and correctly. He hadn't filed it out of anger. He filed it because a child had almost been hurt at the exact spot he'd warned them about, and that was the one thing Harold Whitfield could never again let slide quietly. The district's own legal counsel, reviewing the filing, recognized the name from an old law school textbook, a landmark labor safety ruling she'd studied years earlier, authored by a judge she'd always assumed had simply retired quietly or passed away. She brought the filing to the emergency board meeting and set it in front of Marsh. "Do you know whose name is on this?" she asked. Marsh stared at the line, former federal judge, then at the man's photo attached to the school's old personnel file, the same tired, kind face from the assembly stage, the same navy jacket. The room went very quiet. Someone's pen stopped clicking. A board member's hand, holding her coffee cup, went still. There was no shouting, no courtroom drama. Just a formal district review, triggered automatically by the safety complaint, examining not only the unsafe drop-off zone but every recent personnel decision Marsh had made, including Harold's termination, which the review found had been procedurally improper and retaliatory in nature. The school board didn't hesitate. Marsh was placed on administrative leave within the week, pending a full investigation. The superintendent personally visited Harold's home, apologizing and asking him, humbly, honestly, if he would consider returning, not merely as a bus driver, but as a permanent advisor to the district's student safety committee, with real authority over route and safety decisions going forward. Harold thought about it for several days. Then he agreed on one condition. The cafeteria worker, the crossing guard, and the janitor Marsh had pushed out would all be offered their positions back first, with full back pay. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Harold visited the small cemetery on the edge of town, as he always did, and knelt beside Margaret and Daniel's headstones. This time, for the first time in years, he brought a small bouquet of daisies instead of nothing at all, and he told them, quietly, about the drop-off zone that would finally be fixed, about the workers who'd gotten their jobs back, about the version of usefulness he'd found again without ever raising his voice. The next morning, he drove Route 12 one more time, slowing down at the curve, waving at each child by name as they climbed aboard, his thermos with the faded Cardinals logo steaming gently in the cup holder. Some people mistake a quiet uniform for a quiet mind and a soft voice for a small history. But the strongest people rarely need to announce what they once were. They simply keep showing up, keep their patience, and let the truth arrive exactly when it's needed most, not a moment before. Harold Whitfield never raised his voice, never once said the word judge, never demanded an apology for himself. He only ever asked for a child's safety to matter. And when the truth of who he was finally surfaced, it didn't arrive with fanfare. It simply made sure no one ever dismissed him again. If this story reminded you that the quietest people often carry the deepest histories, subscribe to Hidden Truth Chronicles and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next story.